It's sad that he had to experience those, let's call them atrocities, because how it affects you might affect somebody else. And luckily, he was able to rise above all of those things. So I've had people who have told me, my brother, he was working at a store back when we were teenagers. And I came by the store. Oh, this is my brother. He's your brother. And I'm like, that's when the tongue was a little bit sharper. Yes, racist. I'm his brother. I'm not a racist. Really? Then why did you say he's your brother? My brother and I'm told, look just alike in terms of the physical features and so forth. You could tell that we are brothers, but we don't really look alike. But people say, oh, you guys twins? Right. I said, if so, we're probably fraternal. But no, he's 3 years older than I am. Some of the things, look, there was a person who came to this very house, my cousin's wife. Not really a fan of hers, because we're sitting at the table. It was myself, her, and my sister was sitting next to me. And so she says, I would have never thought you were family because you look like anybody. I went like this to say something, and my sister took her hand and she went like this on my leg and squeezed. And so she's like, I know you're going to say something. Don't make it here. And so I said, all right, good advice. I'm not going to say anything. Ever since then, I don't really deal with that person. It's just, how dare you say that? This is my cousin here. I'm meeting you for the first time, and you're going to do that?
Absolutely. I think, if we don't do it, it's just going to happen to mixed kids. And here's the thing, you've told me that story 3 times. I think you've told it at least once on my channel. And it hurts me every single time to know that. The story about the child who was so undermined by the parent. I did want to say, and I know you said, I told you the story before, but you found it surprising. I do know of a white person whose own grandfather said, you're not my child because you're too dark. She's not dark by any stretch of the imagination, but for a white person, she's kind of just a little bit lighter than me. So like, I suppose this is a totally Germanic person. So I just want people to know this is a much more common.
That's a stain on your soul.
Yeah, but a racist is a racist is a racist. And it's normally that they are very... Okay, I think what I'm trying to say, and I should say it calmly, when people do things like that, whether they're doing it, they're saying because of race or because they're ableist or whatever, it's important for you to know nobody does things to you because you are dark. Nobody does things to you because your hair is kinky. Nobody does things to you because you are disabled. They do something like that to you because they are racist. Your darkness, your shortness, that's not the problem. You have every right to exist and take up space in the world. They're not doing it because there's anything wrong with you. They're doing it because there's something severely wrong with them. And I know that might sound patronizing for me to say, but some people need to just sometimes hear it.
It's a fact.
When someone cheats on you, he didn't cheat on you she didn't cheat on you because you weren't enough or you weren't this, you weren't that. It's because they don't have integrity. That's all. So the issue is with them. And I think one of the important things to teach kids is when they go, why were they bullying me? They're bullying me because I'm poor, or they're bullying me because I'm... They're bullying you because they're... Does that make sense? Because there are thousands of people who don't think of you in that way. There are thousands of people who actually love your dark skin. There are people who actually find it deeply attractive, more than just like on neutral
and
about
admire you for who you are. That's like when people say, oh, well, the world sees me or the world will see you. So I said, really? 8 billion people. They're all going to have the same ideology as you, or rather people who are like you, a very small amount of the world? No. I may not have seen all of the world, but I've seen enough where I can definitively tell you, most people do not think like you do.
Yes. They don't. And some are neutral and some actually find it fascinating. When I landed in New York for the first time, because it was in Long Island and we were girls from all over the world going for a training, right? There were 1 or 2 girls from a part of Europe where they just never seen a black person, and they were just so excited to actually meet. They actually brought that up, and I was like, okay, because we're in an international thing, let me just kind of culturally say, just be careful, don't come across as this and this and that. But to them, it was just like, I just want to meet someone, that would just be so fascinating. Because there was only
natural, innocent curiosity.
Yes. And I have quite bushy hair. And one of the things, okay, I'll just tell you the story because you might find it funny as a New Yorker. I had forgotten my curlers at home. Now, my curlers is how I straighten my hair, right? I'd forgotten them and they didn't bring them on the plane. And I thought everybody with my fro in New York would think I was so disgusting and so this and that. Plus, the New York weather made my hair even bigger.
So,
And
real
then when
quick,
I
I'm getting a
walked
sign in here
around
that says the
and
meeting
saw
is
all the
about to
different
end.
hairstyles, and I was like, oh, okay, so no one's gonna look. That's completely my own narrative. Does that make sense? That I thought that New Yorkers would look down on me, and I looked at them with their crazy hairstyles, and I'm like, it's kind of what you're talking about, right?
I know you look beautiful. A
Thank you.
sign just came on the screen that says the meeting was going to be has to be rescheduled.
Okay.
That's going
What?
over scheduled
Have we
time.
been on for an hour or something?
We've been on for an
Okay.
hour already.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yes,
We
no,
started late.
because we
We'll
started
see what
after 10.
happens. If we cut off, we'll get another one.
Okay. You know, it's funny in the dating world for the darker complected mixed person, a lot of darker complected mixed people will purposely go after somebody who is of a lighter complexion to try to erase what they have been persecuted. And I use the term persecuted against all of their lives. For me, I didn't have that problem. I've known many different types of girls, and to go out with them is one thing, to get into relationships is another thing, and whoever you end up marrying. For me, I always wanted a girl who had the personality traits that would be comparable to mine, having a good sense of humor, having a serious side, an intellectual side, having an open mind. It didn't matter what she was. I've talked to girls who were very dark to those who were very light. And to me, a girl was a girl was a girl. Who I ended up marrying, well, my wife has the persona that is very much like me. She happened to be more of an Amerindian background from Guyana, so she is of a lighter complexion. But Paula could have been anything under the sun as long as her personality was exactly the same. We all have preferences. I like a mixed girl. It doesn't matter if she's a dark mixed girl or a light mixed girl or whatever else. I got a mixed girl who happened to be light. So it's just something that worked out that way. I can't say that I'm lucky. What I lucked out with was her character. Everything
Right.
else just happened to
Yes.
be circumstantial.
Absolutely. So, can I just speak to people who are thinking of dating what they would consider up? Number one, there is no guarantee that if you married a mixed person, especially a light mixed person, that you're going to get any complexion of child. In fact, with mixed marriages, and I come from the most genetically mixed people in the world, we have what we call throwbacks. Out of nowhere, you're going to get a throwback to whomever. Okay? It's interesting. There's this episode of Judge Judy that I actually want to look back at because there was this one guy. He was with the lighter skinned mixed lady, and the king came out in his mind too light for him. Sorry, guys, it's a huge buffet. Okay, the more mixed it's gonna be. Sorry. So that's the first thing.
You never know what you're going to get.
Exactly.
I keep reverting back to my father and how the looks are within the family. They all look alike. Those 5 children, okay? And only thing is different would be the slight variation of hair color. My father's being the most extreme, and also in terms of the skin complexion as well too. Now, to be put in a box because of that, as I said earlier, it definitely has an effect on a person. My father, all right, my father's father was like, yeah, he was probably like this, okay, with freckles. And at one point, he had red hair. As you got older, your hair turns dark. My grandmother was like that, blue eyes and so forth like that. She had dark hair. And so the kids are going to be varying a little bit. My father was, I guess you could say, a throwback because my great grandfather looked like me in complexion and he had freckles. He had a very strong Celtic background as well, too, but he had the quote unquote darker complexion. My father got that from him. And that man's mother before him was an African lady who had an Irish mix to her. So let's just say those genes that trickled down all the way to my father, that resurfaced in my father, is what produced him how he is. And not because he's my father. He just turned 90 years old 2 weeks ago, but what a good looking man. And my mother is pretty easy on the eyes, too. Hi, Ma. Hi, Dad.
So what was I gonna say? Yeah, your father is handsome now that I think about it, because I think I've seen an interview
Oh,
with
thank
him.
you.
Was that in Barbados? I think it might
That
have
was in
been
Aruba 3 years
Aruba.
ago.
Right. What was I gonna say? Okay, so the first thing that I mentioned was you could have a throwback. The second thing is, guys, it is not a child's job to heal your racial trauma. Your racial trauma may not be your fault, but it's your responsibility. It is not your
Hmm.
child's job to protect you from and heal your racial trauma. It is your job to protect them. So you should not be having any kind of mixed kid, whether or not you're mixed or whatever, if what you need is a fairy godmother. This is someone that
Right.
depends on you for everything, right? So, no, they're not going to have less of a difficult time. They're going to have a different mixed race tax to pay. Okay. So, you know, someone like me, you might go, okay, she must have an easier life. Remember, based on what you just said, I'm the fetishized one. Based on what you just said, right? So I've got it. I had to learn, as mixed race kids were more trusting that everybody just loves across the color line purely. And if people see you
Hmm.
in that way, you had to learn to not be naive. Do you get what I'm saying? When you're
Right.
seen, yeah. And when that person hasn't dealt with their internal racism, remember that you're just white enough to ABC, but you're just black enough to be deserving of ABC. And you kind of become this non entity. It's not my job to fix your racial trauma, guys. Job as a husband is to protect a wife. Job as a wife is to protect a husband. Job as a parent is a relationship supposed to come from giving. This thing of trying to extract and stuff is not going to work out. They're not going to heal your racial trauma. They're not.
There's so
You're
many
putting a
people out
band-aid
there
on a
of all
gun
different
wound.
races that have racial trauma. They
Right.
do, because I've met people who will say, "Oh, okay, you don't seem to identify with one group. Why is that? You should be identifying with black people." So I said, "Listen, I identify with everybody because I came from everybody. You try to stay away from that." I said, "I think that's your own trauma that you are trying to put upon me. I'm a person, I walk around and I'm not going to have that mentality of, oh, I'm the only person of color in this room, or I can't talk to her because she is a white girl. No, you want to think that, you go right ahead. If I find
Right.
someone of interest, if it's a
Right.
romantic interest or if it's just a friend, say, hey, how you doing? I'm such and such. No, that kind of ideology is what's holding you back. And in this
Right.
day and age, you're doing a major disservice to yourself. There's a whole world out there. Get to know it. I don't need to know the whole world. Then stay in your corner and don't bother to interact with anyone, because you're not going to be good to anyone, especially not even good to yourself.
So interestingly enough, a pre-scheduled video, just what you just said, a pre-scheduled video that I think went out today or yesterday on my channel. I think I'd like to show you the purpose of showing you this, and I
Yes,
don't
please.
remember the exact thing. Our second president in South Africa after Nelson Mandela. So we had Nelson Mandela, then we had Thabo Mbeki, who had been raised to be the president. After that was always the plan. Okay,
Wow.
so good as far as presidents go and all. Um, but the issue was being raised in apartheid, like being raised in the Jim Crow era. You're going to have paranoia around race, right? You're going to. So the AIDS and HIV crisis in South Africa was later than in the United States. Ours was more kind of 80s, 90s. Okay? It
Hmm.
really started escalating at that point. But Thabo and Becky literally believed that the notion that HIV causes AIDS was a racist thing that white people made up to undermine black people. Remember, he came from a world in which he had to think like that to survive. So I don't
Hmm.
judge the president for thinking like that. But with him not dealing with his racial trauma, I want to show you the harm he did as a president, not having malicious intent. Now, my purpose, most of us aren't going to run a country, am I correct?
Right.
But I want to use this as I'm just starting to feel like I'm getting words today, as kind of a parable for what could happen if you don't heal your own rubbish on the inside, and how you could hurt others. Okay, so
It's
let's
true.
see. Okay, I'm talking about like the racist specter. Okay, so
Okay.
yeah. So remember, we've got the notion that white people are making up that HIV/AIDS um, HIV causes AIDS, right? Then we've got this little black boy
Mhm.
with AIDS who happened to be adopted by a white mom, which then makes the president more suspicious. Okay? And the boy's
Right.
name was Nkosi Johnson. Nkosi means king, and Johnson is just his adopted mom's surname. Give me just a second. Let me just put the correct link where it needs to be. So it was an extract from another video of mine. Let me know if this sounds good.
A little boy once lost his life to racial hysteria, the kind where there is a fear of racism which has no basis in fact. And, sometimes the person who's gone through a lot of trauma, perhaps as a trauma response, then.
Sorry, Philip, could you hear? I just wanted to check that you could hear.
I can hear it. Yes.
Oh, you could? Okay, I'll start from the top.
A little boy once lost his life to racial hysteria, the kind where there is a fear of racism which has no basis in fact. And, sometimes the person who's gone through a lot of trauma, perhaps as a trauma response, then sees it behind every door. But in this case, one little boy and millions of South Africans would lose their life to the folly of one president who perhaps walked through so much pain. But guys, I hope that what you learned from this video is that if you don't deal with your trauma, the consequences could be devastating.
Meantime, paranoia around race. Our president, Mbeki, our second democratically elected president, Mbeki, refused to believe that HIV causes AIDS. He believed that it was just a thing that white people made up about black people. He was coming from a spirit of fear.
Now, guys, once again, please do not judge President Mbeki. That is not your place. If you don't know what South Africa and apartheid is, you have a lot to learn. There is a very real traumatic context to this. This is not about judging him, but it doesn't excuse what he did. Two things can be true. But if you are a trauma survivor in one way, I hope that this story will teach you something about the responsibility to heal yourself. The thing may not be your fault, but it absolutely is your responsibility because you can deeply hurt those around you and the ones for whom you are most responsible. Take it as a fable.
Spirit of fear you want us to go into. And this little boy was asking, can you give ARVs? He died at 12. Can you please give ARVs to mothers dying of AIDS? His parents, his adopted mom ran a house. And then listen to him.
We are normal. We are human beings. We can walk. We can talk. We are deep, just like everyone else. We are all the same.
In a spirit of fear around blackness and whiteness, our president and his whole cabinet walked out of that. But it's not you that had to sit at Nkosi Johnson's bed when he died. It is not you that had to sit at this deathbed with this HIV AIDS positive child. It is the South Africans that you dare to call stupid. The South Africans that you patronize. It is not you that had to say goodbye and smile bravely. The ones you know better than, right? It is not you in the trenches. When South Africa was unwilling to talk about AIDS because of the stigma around race, it was not you that had to watch this little boy and his mom, his adopted mom, bravely destigmatize it. It was not you.
Adopt him, Gail Johnson, and the two of them together would start a shoestring shelter for mothers with AIDS and their children. They called it Nkosi's Haven.
Before, this is a small house. It's not fair to the other mothers who are HIV. They are dying.
The fear of racism lost the racial specter when it wasn't there, looking for demons behind every corner when they weren't there. Cost this country millions of lives. Millions of lives. It is not you. 14. Okay, I don't know how much of that you heard.
I heard everything.
Okay, so what's
And I
one of
could
your
feel my
moments?
heart being squeezed on this because I'm thinking, wow, someone so young that would have to endure this. And where is the happiness in this person's life? Where is the happiness of people overall in this area that they have to see this, witness, or even experience it? This is heartbreaking.
Yeah, and so the whole point of ARVs, if you're not clear, or people who might not be clear, if a mom takes ARVs, then she can breastfeed or she can be pregnant without handing AIDS over to her kids. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it gives the next generation a chance to survive. And that's what he was fighting for. But the president refused to release those at the time. We now have them. It's a happy story. Lots of people have ARVs. It's become a bit of an unhappy story because there are people who steal them and then do drugs or whatever. And
Right.
there's recently
Shoot up
funding
whatever.
has been cut off, but that's a whole nother political that I don't want to get into. I'm actually, believe it or not, for those who are interested, at the time of recording, the United States has stopped funding that. Most South Africans agree with the United States and with Trump on this, believe it or not, whether or not they're his fans. We do agree with him because it's not America's responsibility, it's ours. And we didn't even know America was funding it, you know? So we do actually agree that it's not fair. Like, my aunt by marriage in America, for example, can't get cancer treatment. Why are they funding us when our taxes are going to that? We want to know why that's not going there, but that's another story. That's a whole nother story. But if anyone's interested, that's our position as South Africans for the most part, right? But the point of this story, if we go back to the early 2000s or the late 90s, I would still have been in primary or high school, is that a person who had gone through an incredible amount of racial trauma, didn't heal himself, had the responsibility to save millions of lives and didn't because he
him.
saw a
Wow.
racist behind every tree. And that could be your impact if you don't heal yourself. The racism may not be your fault in the same way as it wasn't my president's fault, right? He grew up in a the most perfect system of racism. So I still have a lot of forgiveness for him because we've forgiven a lot of worse things. Way worse things have been done in South Africa.
Right.
But what I'm saying is heal yourself because you could end up doing that in your own small way. It's not, you can't leave it up to the
Well
next
said.
generation. You can't leave it up to your so-called wannabe light-skinned child that may not be light-skinned. It's not, I'm sorry, not your fault, but your responsibility. Tough love is what I'm trying to give here. So
it's
those
funny
are hard to
how
argue.
racism will take you away from who you really are because you're trying to be something that you're not. When I worked in that same store many years ago, there were two women that came up to my counter. I was a makeup artist. And so I was fitting them with a foundation. And so they said, all right, let me get a couple of choices here. So I picked a couple. So I said, all right, this one matches your skin tone perfectly. And so the lady says, oh, well, I want this one. So I said, this one doesn't match your skin. And so she said, oh, but I want that one. So I said, why? Because I want to be lighter. And so I said, why? And so she says, well, don't you want to lighten your skin? So I said, why would I? Because this is who I am. I'm going to be one way in the wintertime, going to be another way in the summertime. I'm also a guy. I don't have to wear foundation. But if you wear this particular one, your face and your face alone is going to be totally different from your ears, your neck, and your hands. You're going to put it all on these places here. How are you going to be able to function and move around and not get your makeup everywhere? And so she insisted on that one. So I said, okay, you're the customer. The customer is always right. I dressed up her face. The makeup would have looked better if she used her own skin tone, because now she was looking like death warmed over. And she went about her way, and that was it.
So let me change that a bit, right? Let's say you're somebody who has a bit more meat on your bones, right?
Mhm.
But you work really hard to stay skinny, and you get a guy that loves skinny women. Okay, cool. It's wonderful while you're in your 20s. Sooner or later, you're going to be in the hospital. You need the kind of husband that would wipe you if you needed to. You need the kind of
Right.
wife that would wipe you if you needed to. You need the kind of husband that would love your kinky hair. You might as well not be wasting time on the kind of individual that doesn't see your beauty. And that comes from you changing into the kind of person that at least accepts yourself. I still struggle with the whole kinky hair thing, which is weird because when I see any other woman with an afro, I'm like, you're so beautiful. I know it's other people's voices, but there's a part of me that's fighting for this far, no further. Spirit of racism, you stay there. But if we're going to let it into
Right.
our hearts, our minds, our homes, and our families, that's the only domain you have. It's the only domain you have. Whether you're a
Only
teacher,
thing you feel that you might have some type of control over.
Right.
And I
Why
felt
are we
sorry for
letting
the woman
racism
because I'm
take
like,
the reign?
wow, you don't love yourself for who you should be because you have been infected by the ideologies of other people who seen you once, twice, maybe even every day, but they are not really a part of your life. And most of the time, you won't even look at them to say hello. They will not look at you to say hello.
But you're also not investing in the people who do adore you as you are.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? There are
Stop trying to find
many.
the appreciation and the connection with people who don't care about you.
We're right here. We want to know you. Like,
Yeah. Embrace
Yeah.
what you have.
yeah. So let's get on to Life of a Dark Mixie a bit more. Have we touched on it?
Okay.
Or okay, can you tell us about it? Tell us about Life of a Dark
Sure.
Mixie.
Well, basically, all the stories that I've told you have been in this particular book of experiences that I have had or other people that I know of have had. The purpose of this book is to let the mixed world know, those who are of a darker complexion that have gone through this, because I know everybody has gone through this who is of a darker complexion, that there's nothing wrong with you. If someone in your family is putting you in a certain light because of your appearance, then they're not the person you're going to be hanging out with. If you know of anybody who is going to be like this, say like in the dating world, another example, I have met women who were like, oh, well, I like a very mixed looking guy and so forth. You're different from what I'm accustomed to. So I said, well, first off, your choices could be the death of you. You don't know what my background is. So for you to judge me, I think that's very unfair. Okay. And those, if I ran across women like that, it didn't go past a first date. I left them where they were because fine, I went out with you because I found something interesting about you. But then once I heard how you think and the ideologies that you have could be any topic, but this ideology of topic always came up. That's what would automatically I would cut these people off. They were not worth my time because I've
Agreed.
seen what that can do to a person. And if I'm supposed to be with you, say it goes to the highest plateau, there's always going to be that stigma. Oh, well, if he was only, and then what if my children come out, our children come out looking a certain way, and it's not appealing to you? You don't know. Okay, then you're going to treat them poorly too. So let me cut this off now. Practice the lemon law. And the lemon law is if you are with a person for the first 20 minutes on a date, it's not working out, politely excuse yourself. And I've done that.
Why is it called the lemon law?
I don't know, but I guess because lemons are tart and they don't, nothing sweet about them.
I see. Okay. All right. Yeah.
But dark mixie is basically supposed to let the world know, but especially people of a darker complexion, that yes, you do matter. This is still your identity, no matter what color your complexion is. That's the whole purpose of doing it, because I spoke from my own heart of my own life experiences. So
Yeah. You do matter and you are deeply loved, and many mixed people can be darker than straight up black people.
yes,
Yeah.
they can. Look, when you're an MGM, you never know. Look, the difference, again, as I was speaking on earlier, biracial person, you have two different people. You are from a mixed relationship. People will say, oh, you're an MGM, if they know what it is. You're not from a mixed relationship. Both of your parents are, quote unquote, whatever. So no, for me personally, and many other people that I know, I am from a series of mixed relationships. I'm the product of two mixed people. And a lot of people are still trying to connect and understand that. You have to really break it down to them in the most layman terms possible. One day, we won't have to do that.
Yeah.
And
they're full
I
of
don't know if it'll be
nonsense.
in my lifetime, but I wish it was now.
They're full of nonsense. Like I've said before, if you can go to Starbucks and you can understand the difference between a chai latte, a cafe latte, an espresso, a coffee, then you can suddenly you don't understand. Suddenly it's so out there when it's people. The only thing a person can be is half and half. Come on. Come on.
Look, there's a lot of people out there who are MGM that it's basically a roll of the dice. You have, let's just say for the sake of discussion, a biracial person who is half black, half white. Okay? They are half black, half white. 50% of one, 50% of the other. You could have an MGM who could be more of one thing than the other. You could have an MGM person who looks like me, who is more European than he is African. 66% of me is European. It definitely lines up with the family. 26% of me is African. I regard them as the same because you take out one part of me, I don't exist. There have been people in a mixed race group who have said, oh no, that can't be. It's got to be reversed. That's because you don't know about how genetics works. I do. I've studied it. I'm a novice for it. I've experienced it. So who are you to say no? Because you're looking at what a stereotype of a mixed person is? You can't do that. You don't know. Look, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
We're people. We're not
People
just
get
ideas.
bothered when you say that. And then there are those who will say, oh, well, the DNA testing sites, they could be wrong. Sure, they could be wrong because it is still a novice. It is not an exact science. It's gotten better. I've taken different ones where there have been different percentages and what have you. The one that came closest to, and what my tangible proof is the last one that I used. And I've gone with that one. And I did all the research on it as well, too. So.
Okay. Well, I do love this idea, that anybody, whatever their complexion, should know, and especially our dark-skinned mixed race people should know that they're loved, they're accepted, they belong, and other people's issues are their issues, right?
Mhm.
But I think we have spoken a lot about mixed race issues and the sad parts and the heartbreaking parts. But you know what? How about we just shift our focus a bit? It's not all just doom and gloom. There are some very nice things about being mixed race, and there are some advantages to it too,
There
right?
are.
So I'll start with one. I really love being culturally literate. I love that. Especially being a South African Greek, knowing that my fatherland is the birthplace of Western civilization and my motherland is the birthplace of humanity. What a beautiful grounding. What a big blessing. So I love that one. What's one of the things you love?
I like the fact that being mixed has opened me and exposed me to the world. With the research that I have done for the last now 47 years, I've found out places where my direct ancestry originated from that I never even thought about. And I'm amazed. And once I found out about these places, I would do a little research on these civilizations, ancient and modern, and say, wow, I have a lot in common with so many different people. I guess this is why I view the world differently. And for those who do not have this privilege, I guess you could say, because not everybody can research their family that far back or whatever. For someone who has this privilege, I like to say that I don't see things the way other people might because I've educated myself on it. That's one of the best parts about being mixed.
Yeah. I do like that even in some of the most racist times, living in a family that had a love bigger than racism. I feel very blessed about that as well.
I can attest to that as well, too.
Yeah.
Believe me, because in a world, everybody wants representation, everybody wants acceptance. That has to start from your home, because then you'll learn to view yourself that way. And when you go out, there are going to be people who are going to challenge that. But because of what you have already had installed in you, you then can walk through a crowd, separate the crowd, and command that respect without even having to open your mouth.
Yeah. I do like that mixed stays fixed. Not going to lie. Black don't crack and mixed stays
It's a
fixed.
fact. Mixed does stay fixed.
Yeah. I do like that. And I'm sure it's not easy on other people, but the stubbornness. I do like being born of stubborn parents. I do find, I'm just going to be honest, when I babysit kids, I do find the first generation mixed race kids are amongst the most stubborn kids from like being taught.
Really?
Yes. I'm like, it's because we come from stubborn parents. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that they're mixed. It's like, in order for those parents to have been in an interracial relationship, not today, but like from before, you had to have stubborn, cheeky parents anyway. And so I
like to call it strong in their convictions.
Yeah. 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 Okay. I think that's all I've got. Do you have anything more to say?
I think what we did pretty much hit everything on the head. It literally just put everything in perspective. We are exposed to the world. We have had the privilege of having those lineages to enable us to get to know people and to relate to people from all different walks of life. And I'd like to say that's kind of a gift that has been bestowed upon us as well, too. Everybody who is mixed has this. Not everybody who is mixed will know to embrace it or to inquire about it.
Yeah.
I like the fact that being multicultural, being multinational, and being multiracial has given me an edge in life in terms of being able to communicate with people. Whether they speak a different language and we don't understand each other, I find a way to find that common ground to speak with that person and become friends until we can get a better grasp on each other's language and actually hold a full conversation without some kind of device or pointing at things.
The ability to see people, because you have to learn to navigate these weird waters. Like, you live in a family that's so anti-racist. I don't know. I'm not saying this is everybody's experience. Then you got into the world that is so set in their ways. I don't know. I feel like you learn very young to navigate
You do.
a lot of.
You're going to be chastised for it. You're going to be berated. You're going to be singled out. You're going to be
Or ignored.
ostracized, ignored. That's a small group of people in regard to what is in store for you should you decide to take advantage of it.
There's also the being ignored. Like, people, when they see you as one of them, there's stuff they say in front of you that they wouldn't necessarily say in front of so and so. So you also spend a lot more time as a fly on the wall, I think. You know? Did
That
you
can be a
find
good
that?
thing because it taught me how to observe things and
Yes.
size people up. Not so much judge them, but to say, okay, I see how their actions are. I can pretty much guess how they're going to handle certain situations. And then when I actually do speak with them, within the first couple of paragraphs of speech, I'll know whether or not to deal with them or not.
And for any third culture child, you don't have to cross the color line here. But third culture child, for those who don't know, is when your parents, let's say your parents, the one group of parents is French and the other one is Italian. There's a third culture child, right?
Mhm.
They've got their own third culture that's only them. You learn which rules in society are actually arbitrary, because you're just saying over at this auntie's house, these are the rules. And then you're saying at that auntie's house, and those are the rules. And you're just trying not to get in trouble. And you realize how many
Right.
societal
You're
rules.
walking a very fine line because you have to learn both sides and what water to tread upon in the right time.
But you do learn how arbitrary society's assumptions are, because what this group thinks is impossible, that group does every day. I don't know if you noticed that when you were a kid.
I did notice that because, look, on my father's side, you had the French and Dutch influence. On my mother's side, you had the British influence. The British was on my father's side too, through his mother. But for the most part, I found it to be more French and Dutch influence. On my mother's side, it was straight British influence through Barbados. And I saw how they interacted amongst themselves, all loving and caring and so forth. I could see those who were more open-minded and less strict as opposed to those who were walk this line.
Right. And like, when you
Mhm.
live in both those worlds, you also realize how arbitrary this idea that those people are inferior and these people, you're like, no, 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 no. There are certain things that people of this race honestly just do better. And then there are the things that
Right.
people of that race honestly just do better. You know? And so
It's part of their culture, what they do.
what I love is being exposed to everybody's way of doing it, right? And kind of putting it together in my own way.
Right. It's a combination